outreach public notice. Notice is hereby given that Fulcrum Enterprises LLC shall host a community outreach meeting for a proposed marijuana establishment on December 30th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Fairfield Inn and Suites, 249 Stockbridge Road, Great Barrington, Massachusetts. The proposed indoor marijuana cultivator and marijuana product manufacturer is anticipated to be located at 22 Van Duzenville Road, Great Barrington, Mass. There'll be an opportunity for public to speak, for public to ask questions. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Kate McCormick, Murtaugh Marcus. I'm here on behalf of Fulcrum Enterprises. I'm here with John Heck and David Ross of Fulcrum. Before we start the meeting, I want to discuss kind of the specifics and why we are here tonight, and give a little context to the process, because I know there's been a lot of questions. The state has certain requirements, and those state requirements are overseen by the Cannabis Control Commission, which you hear being referred to as the CCC. During that progress, there's two major local steps that are part of the state regulation, and those are separate and apart from the zoning bylaws in the town. The community outreach meeting is one, and the host agreement issued by the select board is the other. The host agreement is entered into between the town selectmen and the applicant. Before a host agreement can be issued, the applicant must host a community outreach meeting. The host agreement and proof that this meeting took place must be both filed within 6 months of initiating the license application with the CCC. We've had two community outreach meetings. These community outreach meetings are put on by the applicant, not by the town. They're separate from the town process. Our original community outreach meeting was on May 14th, and the second one was on May 28th of 2019. Since Fulcrum did not have a host agreement or subsequently file the application with the CCC by November 28th, we were required to host another community outreach meeting. In case, I see a few new faces, so in case there are some questions, I just wanted to run through the timeline and where we are. On July 26th, the application for special permit and site plan review were filed with the town of Great Barrington. August 22nd, there was a planning board meeting regarding the special permit and site plan review. August 26th, the select board meeting regarding the HCA. August 28th, the Conservation Commission meeting. September 5th, Board of Health. September 9th, Select Board opened the public hearing for the special permit. September 12th, there was a planning board meeting and site plan review. September 23rd, there was a select board meeting that was continued. October 21st, select board meeting continued. November 18th, select board meeting continued. I want to remind everybody that tonight's meeting is not a meeting that's held or hosted by the town. It's not tied to the special permit, but is a requirement of the CCC. The select board will reopen their public hearing for the special permit on Monday, January 13th. We urge everybody in this room to attend that meeting and to continue to be involved with the public process. As I'm sure most people are aware, Fulcrum has made some changes to the project to address the concerns raised in this process. These will be all presented in full. Thank you. These will all be presented in full at the select board hearing on the 13th. We will do, I'll take your question, but we're going to do public comment and discussion at the end of our presentation.
It's just I'm recording. I don't know if you have to.
That's fine. That's
okay.
fine with us.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a public meeting, but
no,
it's
I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. Anybody else is welcome to record the meeting as well. The location of the proposed marijuana establishment, 22 Van Duzenville Road, Great Barrington, Mass. It's a 5.78 acre site. The types of marijuana establishments which will be located there is a marijuana cultivator and a marijuana product manufacturer. A marijuana cultivation establishment and manufacturing establishment are allowed in an industrial zone by special permit from the select board. The cultivation facility is proposed to be 58,500 square feet. 5,000 square foot metal building with a 416 square foot self-contained lab will be housed inside.
Other contributors include the SciSense Foundation since 19.
We talked about the state requirements. It is not a by right use, but it requires a special permit from the Board of Selectmen for both cultivation and manufacturing, a host agreement by the Select Board, site plan review by the Planning Board, and any potential septic or well permits by the Board of Health. The Town of Great Barrington zoning bylaws also includes local licensing regulations, which can be found in section 7.18 of the Great Barrington zoning bylaws. In that section, it requires the special permit as previously discussed, and there is no Board of Health regulation pertaining to marijuana establishment. Do you want to go on from 7?
Sure. And there's a requirement that the location comply with a 500-foot buffer zone from any existing public or private school. Great Barrington has a smaller buffer zone of 200 feet, and Fulcrum will comply with both, either 200 or 500 feet from any existing school. And it asks if we as the applicant are creating a new building or moving into an existing one. And we will be constructing new greenhouses and a new warehouse, all of which will be fully compliant with the security requirements set forth by the CCC. 935 CMR 500 is the statute. And we're also will be taking every possible step to prevent any diversion, especially to minors. That will include full perimeter and interior video surveillance 24/7 that will detect any product diversion to minors or anyone else on the property. Video surveillance at loading areas will be combined with a metric tracking system. And for those of you not familiar with the metric tracking system, each plant is registered and computerized. So any activity from the time it begins its life, let's say, is registered and tracked by this metric tracking system. So we will, in addition, as I say, video surveillance, and the computer will be able to know where any product is at any given moment. And additionally, this is not going to include any retail, so we're not providing access to the general public or even soliciting visitation. Number 10 talks about information demonstrating how the applicant intends to ensure that the location will not constitute a nuisance to the community as defined by law. We have demonstrated very low impact for traffic. All the equipment will be below noise thresholds. Additionally, we've done air dispersion modeling that indicates there's a very low probability for any odor to migrate beyond the perimeter of our property. In the event that does occur, we have a mitigation system that will be utilized. Fulcrum will also work with the relevant town departments we have already. We will continue to work with the town departments to ensure a non-nuisance long-term presence in the town. And we are totally committed to being strong corporate and civic neighbors in Great Barrington. We're asked to describe how the applicant where a marijuana establishment will positively impact the community. We're not a retailer, so the tax option and prepared relevant questions for retailing is not relevant to us. We're cultivation and manufacturing only. Our host and community agreement has not been concluded, so any discussion or commitment to making contributions is premature, although that is our intention. And we have every intention to hire local staff as much as possible. So that pretty much covers the CCC requirements for this public meeting.
We can take questions if there are questions. There are some items that I feel that we should go into minor detail here and leave the greater detail for the select board meeting, specifically if it pertains to a topic that the selectmen hired a peer reviewer on, because we'd want everyone to be able to answer both sides, but we're willing to talk about it. We might just not get in as depth as someone here may be looking for, but we're willing to try to approach those. Michelle, I think you had your hand up, but Jonathan had it up a little bit before, so.
It appears, based on this, that there's been a size reduction.
Correct.
About more than 25%. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, do you wanna?
We did an in-depth analysis of sound implications with a peer reviewer. We were close, we were below the thresholds on everything, but close enough that we decided to reconfigure the positioning of the greenhouses. Previously it was a north-south direction, and now we're an east-west.
Oh, interesting.
Secondarily, in response to odor concerns, we recognize that 2 fans per greenhouse was a little bit harder to address. And we've concluded that we'll have only 1 exhaust fan per greenhouse. There would be 13 greenhouses, and all of the exhaust fans will be facing east.
Which will be away from Van
Which
Duzenville
is
Road if anyone has a
farthest
question.
from any receptor.
And also the prevailing wind would.
It tends to the north.
The gravel pit.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Before I get to you, Trevor, if Michelle was.
Just really quickly, you just said that exhaust fans are going east to west.
No, they're facing
directed.
east.
Yeah.
They'll be exhausting to the east,
Yeah,
towards Nolan's industrial property.
the other side of the greenhouses is intake, so they'll be coming in from the west side, flowing through
Okay,
east.
because that's towards Division Street.
No, it's
Is that-
actually back towards the river. It's,
Okay.
you know, it's
Yeah.
No,
You're-
no.
You're
I-
south, your Division Street is south of our property.
At the May 28th community outreach meeting, Select Board member Lee Davis had asked whether you had looked at any other properties. And Mr. Heck, you responded no. I listened to the recording. And you had stated that the attraction of this property was the confluence of industrial property. And I was wondering what you meant by that comment.
Well, the impression we had when we came into town was this is an industrial zone. And it lent itself more towards being away from a downtown area. We haven't found anything that was away from residences completely. Additionally, the infrastructure that Mr. Nolan put in was attractive to us because there's water and power already on the site.
And the site's cleared as well.
So there is a confluence of favorable conditions
But
from our outsider perspective.
I understand the reduction in the square footage right now. Under CCC rules, you do have the ability to expand, am I correct?
We would, but to understand how a special permit works, if we did an expansion, we would have to go for a modification. So it's, what we are asking for is very specific. It would require another, open hearing in front of the select board for an extension or an expansion or a new special permit. So we are permitting the use as presented, and it'll be tied to plans, it'll be tied to conditions. Any change of any of those items would trigger an amendment to the special permit.
But it is a possibility, an ability. You do have the ability if you go through the proper
Yeah, any
process.
business can expand. CCC does set thresholds. It would require changes. If we went up above the next threshold, it would require all new licensing as well, or at least an amendment to the license. So it would require many more steps, public steps, and public hearing as well. Because cultivation in the town of Great Barrington is a special permit, it will be always in front of the select board at a public hearing unless that's changed in the zoning bylaws. Trevor.
I'm very intrigued for a number of reasons. I've got about 3 questions, if I can remember them all. The first one really pertains to the return that you expect to get out of this business. And that's actually very important for the residents of Houstonic as well as the town of Great Barrington, I would guess. I've spent a career studying financial analysis and financial returns. And from what I can gather, I assume that it's you, Mr. Heck, and your brother who are the principal financiers behind this project.
No, David is
Okay.
our partner and investor as well.
So one would assume you're looking for a reasonable return on your investment. That would be a reasonable assumption.
I'm sorry,
You
what
would
kind
be
of
looking
return?
for a reasonable return on your investment. That would
Yes.
be an assumption. You've just reduced the size of your growing facility
Yes.
significantly. When I presented your original ideas to associates of mine in California who live in a marijuana growing area in California, they looked at 80,000 square feet and they laughed. They said, this is far too small. You can't possibly exist with that sort of cultivation and make a reasonable return on an investment. Subsequent to that, and you'll be aware of this, I'm sure, because you probably read all the financial aspects of the cannabis industry, I understand that at the moment in the US, as a result of the legalization of cannabis in a number of states, that there is currently 2.5 years worth of cannabis or marijuana stock in warehouses based on current demand. You're aware of this, I assume. I also understand that in Canada there is 10 years worth of stock in warehouses versus their demand. I also understand that China, who has yet and probably won't legalize marijuana, are considering growing marijuana with an intent to export to satisfy demand. So my question to you is, how are you actually going to, I can understand the whole basis of your processing and the logic behind that. I'm sure that's where your return is. Where are you going to get your stock from? Where is your marijuana coming from? You just reduced the amount of growing that you've actually put a plan for. The industry seems to be awash with very cheap marijuana. Where are you going to get your marijuana from to process it in this 5,000 square foot processing facility?
From our cultivation greenhouses.
Well, just 58,000 square foot.
58,500 square feet.
And Trevor, just to correct you, the actual processing lab is 416 square feet. So that's where the processing happens. It's inside of a building, but there's gonna be an office in the building.
Yeah, and I understand that's where you get your profit from. I'm just very intrigued that you've just now cut the amount of material that you're going to be processing, if that's all you're going to be processing, in an industry that is awash with product. So I can only assume you're going to find it very difficult to make a reasonable return out of this investment, which is important for the town of Great Barrington and residents in Houstonic.
So just to summarize, your question is, are they going to manufacture more than the products that they're going to grow?
Well,
on
it
the
comes
facility?
into Michelle's point in terms of future expansion plans, but it also speaks to where you're going to get this product from. Are you really just going to be utilising 58,000 square foot of growing? Because on the numbers that I've seen and the people I've talked to, it seems highly unlikely.
Okay, you wanna answer?
I think we have a comfort level and
Should we have a comfort
I'm
level?
trying,
That's
say it
my
again,
question.
please.
Should we have a comfort level? That's my question.
Well, I appreciate your concern and sensitivity to our profitability. But with the experience you have in finance, I would presume that you understand no one goes into a business to lose money. So our intention is as advertised. Cultivation, we feel comfortable that we will get a return. Our competitive capabilities, is because of David and our other partner who have been at this cultivation for quite a number of years, provide us with a competitive advantage to a lot of our competitors.
So let me ask you another question. Has your anticipated financial return just gone down by 25% or more as a result of reducing the amount of product that you're growing?
We're comfortable with our business plan, let me put it that way.
Okay, is there any other, I think he's answered your, we could have this conversation if you would like to stay after and have some more conversations, then.
I'm happy to have it in a
Yeah.
public.
Okay, and that's fine, but you're.
I'm not quite sure what,
It's
where
this-
you're going with this.
Well, the point is that the town of Great Barrington only succeeds in this whole process if you succeed. If you don't succeed, then that's a problem for the town of Great Barrington. And it's a particular problem for the residents very close by to you, because they're going to go through whatever the discomfort is going to be, we can go into that later, for nothing, if you don't succeed.
So Trevor, just to answer your question, I think he has explained that their business model still works with the square footage. I understand that you wanna get this point out and that there's a concern of what it'll be left behind, but I do think that that's more
Kate,
of a
it's very
topic.
this is a very important
Please,
question.
I understand, he's answered the question though, and we're not
No,
gonna make.
he hasn't.
He has answered the question. If you have concern, it should be raised at the select, if you don't like his answer, your
My
concern
point
should be
is,
raised to the select board.
The price of cannabis,
Is how much per
wholesale
pound?
cannabis, has actually just collapsed.
How much is
okay?
it per pound?
It's gone down
How much?
significantly. It's gone down more than 30% over
What's
the last year.
what's the rate?
Whatever it is.
What is
I haven't
it?
got the rate on the top of my head at this stage. But
Okay,
you probably
so
answer the.
we're gonna- so-
you probably look at the
Trevor,
publications.
I've asked this, again, this is our meeting, we're here to try to answer questions. I know there's a lot of people who are gonna leave here not satisfied that we've answered the questions or even like our answers. You may be one of them. So there's other people that would like to say some things. I have no problem with either having further conversations after the
Okay.
fact, or I would suggest that you put your concerns to the select board, cause they're making the decision. Tonight's meeting is not about if the special permit gets passed, okay?
Let me ask his question a little differently. Mr. Heck, do you have any intent to be manufacturing marijuana products for marijuana that is grown elsewhere?
It's come up in conversation. We have no intention to do that.
Okay, would you be willing to, a condition of your permit, to not manufacture marijuana that is grown elsewhere on this site?
Okay, so why don't we discuss that, and if we will bring it up we will volunteer that at the meeting. If not, I suggest that you bring it up.
Can he answer the question?
Can he answer, I'm just asking a question. Would you be willing?
Well, the answer right now is that they've had these discussions before.
That's not an answer.
That's not answering my
And it
question.
doesn't change, it won't change any of the traffic or neighborhood implications.
Yes, it
So
will.
the answer is yes.
Yes, it will.
The
Trucks coming
answer
in.
is yes, right?
No,
The answer is yes.
I
That you
mean-
will be bringing in
So you're flying.
other
Okay.
products
Please
that's
only,
not grown there.
this meeting is only gonna work if people raise their hands and are called on, so,
How about giving good answers?
okay, if you
So-
don't like our answers, that, I'm not sure we're gonna get
We
there
just want
either.
answers, that's all, we're not getting
Yeah,
answers.
Well,
So
this is
here's-
not the-
I'm gonna just, can I ask my question? Is that
You,
okay?
you can definitely ask your question,
Okay.
but let me say again that the actual public hearing, okay, this is an input meeting, and I would love to hear your concerns. I take the concern both from Doug and from Trevor, that they're concerned with if it's gonna be a viable business, if there's gonna be products manufactured outside. That's the point of a community outreach meeting, okay?
It's not according to
So-
the guideline.
Well, it is. So we will
I'll
answer the
quote it.
questions as we can, but we may not have volunteering restrictions to be put on a permit that's not even being addressed today in this, forum. So, ma'am,
Okay,
you
so
can,
my question is, would you be willing to say now that you will only be processing and manufacturing product that is grown on that property? Or are you going to be bringing in product from somewhere else? That's just
This is not the, I'm not willing to make a commitment
answer
at this
is
public
yes.
forum, cause
Yeah.
this is not the venue.
That's fine, we got our answer.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay.
So, there's a rumor that you're paying $680,000 for the land, is that true?
It's the
again, that
purchase.
has nothing, no bearing to do with the community.
Well, I only bring it up because there's a parcel in Lee that's being sold for $199,000, which is the same acreage, and it's already pre-approved for any marijuana, businesses. And I'm just curious why you wouldn't have looked at that parcel.
I'm not familiar with it. How long has it been on the market?
More than 6 months, more than a year probably.
And it's in Lee, you said?
Yeah, yeah,
That's news to me.
she gets the commission.
Okay.
So can you, I mean,
I mean,
the
part
sale
of
of
the-
the land is gonna be public, so I'm just curious what your contract is for that particular
Well,
parcel.
part of
in
our
Housatonic.
considerations were power, water, and utilities. So we have no idea where that parcel is located and what the cost would be to bring sufficient power, water, sewer, what have you.
Well, I have to believe that the delta between that land and the land in Housatonic, if you're paying $680, would be more beneficial to you to be in Lee.
On the surface, it might appear that way, but until we knew where the power locations were, and spoke with the power company, we would have no idea. It can be very expensive to bring power from, sufficient power that we need to a site.
I'm just wondering how much time either of you two spent on Van Dusenville Road at all. I spent 40 years there, and just because you're turning the greenhouse, the wind still blows towards Van Dusenville Road. 40 years I've been there, I think I know. I mean, you can turn the fans the other way, the air is still gonna go that way. I mean, how much
It's
time
the
did
mountains.
you or your planners sit
We-
down there and
Part of the,
address that?
part of the January 13th meeting, you'll see, and it'll probably be a public record shortly, the peer reviewer, we had an air dispersion modeler.
How long did they sit down there and gauge the wind blowing down?
Well, it's more than sitting on the property. We did,
All you have to do is walk down there and sit for a day and see that the air is gonna blow towards Van Dusenville Road.
well,
That's what, I mean,
what
spend
we've
some
tried,
time. You wanna move into a neighborhood, you don't even know the neighborhood.
well,
You never
what-
went to any of the neighbors in that, on that road and greeted anybody, say, hey, this is my plan, you just come in and throw this out there. You never went to anybody. You never spent any time on Van Dusenville Road.
I wouldn't agree with you on that, but more
How much time do you
importantly,
spend on Van Dusenville Road?
I'm sorry, we didn't meet,
You didn't meet any of
but-
us.
say it
This
again?
is where you meet us, cause you come in here and you're trying to sell this to us, you have no answers for us. Then you say low impact, one-way trips did you say to the town that you were gonna make on Van Duzersville Road that was low impact?
There's barely any traffic to
What
this,
did you say
but
for the town, when you went for a special permit was I think Michelle may know offhand, it was like 70 or 80 one-way trips?
No,
And you're
there-
not bringing
there-
anything else in?
Vehicle,
Yeah, one-way trips, it was in the special permit, I don't know
No.
offhand, so I'm not gonna say.
It was
It
close.
was 70 or 80,
Yeah.
something, it was a high
In
number,
your
that's
special
not
permit
low impact.
application, there
yeah.
was-
And
Another
that,
thing is, there's no power, no water on that parcel of land.
yeah, it comes in through Nolan.
He has a green building down there that has no power in
I
it.
know, but that doesn't pertain to our site.
Power has to go underground, am I correct? Does it have to be concrete encased in through that industrial zone?
It's already in the industrial zone.
It's not down there.
It's as far as Nolan Drive, it's at Nolan Drive,
It's at the intersection of Nolan Drive and the access road.
and that's where it ends. So to get three-phase power from there, it has to be concrete encased through that entire industrial zone.
Not through the entire industrial
Yeah,
zone.
yeah. Hey,
Well, it doesn't. I've seen the
Well-
plans. The plans are on file.
I just
And again,
want-
and will be in full compliance with the town of Great Barrington's requirements.
I just want you
And
to-
more specifically, if I might, please, the air dispersion modeling is
I
a
can sell you
rigorous
a model.
scientific methodology that is approved by any number of associations. So we wanted an empirical, scientific process to be applied here, rather than a subjective, interpretation of which way the wind is blowing.
I know you're saying how you're gonna help, work with the town. What are you gonna do with the neighbors that say we can't live outside because it smells so bad? What are you gonna tell us? What are you gonna do for us that we can't enjoy something I'm spending my life fortune on trying to work every day, but I can't use because I'm gonna smell the. What are
We
you
don't
gonna-
agree that will be the condition. And again, tonight is not the format to.
I'm just looking for an answer from you, being honest with
Well,
me. Say,
the air,
what are you gonna just do honestly to help me out?
the
Well,
air
I
disper-
just spent a lot of money on my land, my house, and I can't enjoy it, and you're just gonna say, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm probably not gonna do anything, because once I get my special permit, I'm good. What are you
I'm
gonna
not,
do?
let's see if we can't clear the air here. If you're finished talking, I'll
I'm
try
waiting for
and
an answer.
Well, you
answer
keep
some of your-
interrupting, so let him try to answer your question, and we'll.
The air dispersion modeling, as I say, was done over a rigorous protocol established by the peer reviewers. And that indicates I don't have all the statistics, and that's why I don't wanna get too deep into the topic here if I don't, this forum is not the forum for it. January 13th is there. However, you'll see tens of thousands of data points taken from a local meteorological database of wind and temperature and environment, weather conditions that impact the airflow. And those conclusions will be, if they're not public already, they'll be public very shortly from the report that we filed. We're happy to clarify that after you've read it and understand the dilution rates from the air dispersion and some technical things that these guys are very good at. They're professionals.
And there'll be an expert that could answer your question with more certainty than we can at that meeting. We will
And-
bring in our air expert. The town has hired a peer review on odor. He will be there also to answer questions on the 13th. So hopefully we can give you a more detailed and clear answer to your question, but without having all the facts. It is their position that you will not have an odor event, that won't be your issue. I know sitting here, it's easy for us to tell you that. On the odor presentation on the 13th, I think will bring some clarity. And I also think that the selectmen need to hear those concerns as well, which they have throughout the process, but.
How much more dozer work are they gonna use on that property to level off that 5+ acres? Cause he's got gravel piles piled on it right now.
Those piles will not be there. The site has to be delivered without those piles. That's not my client.
Is the property gonna be lowered to make it wider, so it's 5?
No, it's basically existing grade. Do you want to explain anything? There's almost no site work to be done, on the site once, the current owner removes those stockpiles.
So those piles are gonna be leveled off and pushed
I don't,
towards,
I think they're gonna be removed, sir.
okay, removed just off, not pushed off the banking towards the solar panels?
Correct, they're gonna be, I'm not sure where they're going on the property, cause that's not our,
Right.
but they will be removed off of the 5.8 acres.
That upper area between Nolan's Road to his shop and the railroad tracks, that's gonna be where your buildings are.
Correct. It'll be on in between his access drive, if you will, and the bank to go to the railroad tracks. And it's pretty much to grade. There is some specific drawings that have been filed as part of the site plan review that you can look at that has the elevations.
Yeah.
So you can see, cause obviously there's a little smoothing out, but it's not a large, it was one of the attractive things about that site. I'm just gonna try to get everyone else and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay, I have three things, I guess, I'd like to question. There's a young woman up there who mentioned that there was land in Lee for $199,000, I guess. You're gonna pay maybe allegedly $680,000, but you have not looked anywhere else, so how do you know your investment might not make it less to take this land in Lee, which is $199,000, which is what, almost $500,000 less than you're gonna pay. That might make it easy to do, or you haven't investigated anywhere else, so you don't know. So that's an issue. Also, now I could be wrong, I don't know for sure, but did you not mention something, Mr. Heck, that you weren't gonna go to somewhere where you weren't wanted or something to that effect? I wonder what changed your mind to now all of a sudden you wanna push this through, and also, my mind is blown at the negativity that you guys are coming up against, and you're gonna bump your head against this. I don't think you'll ever have a good relationship with the town. Why are you bothering?
There's a number of factors. We understood that marijuana was approved by a pretty hefty margin. So we thought we were coming into a town that had already considered and voted and decided upon the receptivity to marijuana, different than a number of other towns that we investigated around in the Berkshires.
You said earlier that you hadn't looked anywhere else, so how can you say that make that statement now?
I'm quoted as saying that, and I don't.
It was on the recording,
Well, I
which
mean,
I'm happy to share.
I'm not sure, I think the question is, they were looking in the area, I don't think they got to as far with due diligence on another parcel,
Well,
but
I think maybe the
wasn't the only
context
parcel
was,
they looked at.
did we look anywhere else in Great Barrington?
I didn't
Yeah,
ask you
I'm
that.
happy
I
to
said
share
anywhere
the
else. I didn't
recording with
specify.
you.
All right, look,
And you just
No,
told
just for
about
your
it.
peace of mind.
Michelle,
Say it again?
may I? And you just told about a place that costs less money. You also need to
but we don't
answer-
know what the total cost of that project could be.
Because you haven't checked.
I
One has
wasn't-
to do homework
It-
to find out. How else would you know anything? How else do I know what something costs at the store if I don't look and find out? It's simple. You're making it sound like, oh my God, we don't know. You
well,
have
there
to
was
check.
definitely due diligence made, months of due diligence before it got to the special
I
permit.
believe I was speaking to Mr. Heck.
Well,
not you.
I'm speaking as his agent,
Okay, but I was
we're
speaking
one and
with
the same.
him. He didn't ask you to speak for him.
Again, I don't
And why
recall,
did you change your attitude?
I don't recall the specific quote that Michelle is referring to. We did speak with a number of brokers in the region around the Berkshire County area. So there has been a fair amount of due diligence.
Now, I was speaking about why you changed your attitude, and you say you would not want to go somewhere where you weren't wanted. Why did that change, is my question.
I don't know that it has changed. I think
Here it
relative
is,
to
it
the
does
total,
now.
the total population of Great Barrington, I'm not sure that, we calculated maybe 5 or 7% represent those people who are not welcoming us, let's put it
It's
that
our
way.
neighborhood,
incorrect.
though.
In our
It's
neighborhood,
it's
yeah.
it's where we live, it's where we invested.
And we continue to maintain that once you understand all of the precautions and procedures and, how can I say, systems that we're putting in place, odor will not be as bad as you anticipate it to be.
And we have invested a considerable amount of money in order to protect our homes and our neighborhood with our own independent consultant to look at everything to ensure that. I'm sorry. I'm just furious what I'm hearing, because just so you know, Mr. Heck, the town of Great Barrington on January 22nd is going to have a community forum with regard to marijuana, limiting marijuana establishments in Main Street, Great Barrington, maybe look at zoning. So clearly our select board has seen a shift in attitudes in Great Barrington, and I, for one, if I knew way back then when I voted yes, that I would be losing the enjoyment of my property, I wouldn't have done that. But for the select board to open it up to a public forum on January 22nd, unfortunately, after January 13th public hearing, should tell you something right now, that there's a shift going on in Great Barrington. We had one select board person actually talk about not wanting her children to walk by retail shops on Main Street. So there's a shift going on. So where you come from, Westchester County, you may be out of touch what's really going on here in Great Barrington and Housatonic. And at a public hearing, the people here maybe get 3 minutes at a public hearing after your team of attorneys or your team of specialists and everything. The citizens are at the bottom of the totem pole at that public hearing. And I want to make each and every one of the people here in this room clear on that. So you, yes, probably correctly so, because it is a special permit process, keep referencing this public hearing, at which time our hands are going to be tied. Which is why we spent an inordinate amount of money paying an attorney. Because it seems like in this venue, the only people that have a voice are the attorneys.
Well,
I never
the
got an answer to why you
conclusions,
changed your attitude.
the
I-
conclusions
so you know.
that you won't be able to enjoy your property, the evidence for that we're presenting is contrary.
And I do have some evidence as to that after everybody else gets time to speak.
Okay, so if anybody hasn't spoken yet, I think everybody has, so I'm just gonna start to go through, cause everybody whose hands are up.
She hasn't spoken.
Denise hasn't, and then I'll get to you next after.
I'd just like to
Or first?
address the confrontational atmosphere that's grown up. And I understand, Mr. Heck, that you say you'd like to be a good civic neighbor. And yet, for a variety of reasons, there's a lot of animosity that's going on here. And my question has to do with why we should trust you, given the history that's happened, even calling this meeting in the middle of a holiday when many of us know people that couldn't come, and having it on a night when we're in the middle of an ice storm. Housatonic is not plowed and sanded. I was going all over the place. So why wouldn't you even schedule this meeting at a time when more people could come? This just draws into question for me the sincerity of you wanting to be a good neighbor to us, and that we can trust that the negotiations are gonna be on the up and up.
I'm gonna address the scheduling, based on the town calendar, and to have this meeting prior to our meeting on the 13th, there was very limited ability to do so. We did not wanna have it last week. We did not wanna have it, there was no time really with all the other meetings that are happening to have it on another time. By the time it was published, noticed, the weather was fine through most of the day today. It was rain, it wasn't a problem. I'm sorry that it turned, but we had to make a judgment call, so again.
It's been forecast for 3 days that we're having an ice storm.
Well,
If
we
the
had to,
temperature
we're
goes
about,
down
we're about
tonight-
3 weeks out with publishing and noticing of the public meeting, so unfortunately, we appreciate you all
What about
coming.
the week after Thanksgiving?
We weren't there yet, so,
So we're at a loss.
The bottom of the total.
For you to
Where-
have a meeting
where
where more
were you?
people could come.
I mean, you said you weren't there yet.
we were
I mean, you've been-
we were finishing our submission and working with the peer reviewers at that point to get us ready for this final,
effectively a new proposition, which is
it's not a new proposition. We're taking comments that we've heard through the process, just like any special permit is, and we're incorporating it. We haven't expanded it. We've talked about odor, we've talked about sound. All changes that we've made has been to make it a smaller facility and to address the concerns that have been brought up and that we could address. Doug?
Mr. Heck, I think it was probably something you wish you'd never said. I think it was probably something that your attorney wishes you'd never said. That you didn't want to go to some community that didn't want you. But don't turn around and make us look stupid. Don't say that, well, if we only understood, because I am very capable of understanding. Everyone here is capable of understanding. So don't put it on us, okay? You're the one that said it. So it's on you. It's not on us, okay?
I'm sorry that I didn't explain myself. What I'm trying to say is that we have spent a lot of time and effort with professionals to come to conclusions that illustrate
We have a
that.
professional who disagrees with your professional, okay?
Okay, this is not the forum for it, but, you know, that's what this process will be about.
Our professionals will be there on the 13th. The professionals can discuss it. There's been nothing presented from your, so I don't even know what we're responding to there, but I'm telling you, we are going to have all experts available at the meeting on the 13th to answer any questions from peer review expert, and if you're bringing an expert, I'm sure they'll give plenty of time for your expert to be heard as well. This woman has, oh, and I'm sorry, Denise hasn't said anything either, but
go first.
if you,
I guess I just wanna share that this is the first meeting I've attended, about this, and it is extremely frustrating that you sort of say there's this report, if there's this study, and we've run these models, and now we have to wait till the 13th to find out what they actually say. So we're sort of sitting here, you know, okay, why are we here if you can't tell us specifically what they're saying? I mean, I find you say there's a very low probability of odor being released. What is that probability?
do you wanna state what our experts said? We can't rebut this at this moment, but we can give you some.
This information, if it hasn't been published already,
It's gonna be all town, everything is being submitted to the town, and then the town makes it's public. So we've been aware that the peer reviewers are getting ready to issue reports. It may have come out today, I don't know. It may, sometime between yesterday and the 13th, they're gonna be public. Everything is public in the special permit, process.
And it takes a while to get it from the town.
Okay, and again, that's not, so I'm sorry, if we can finish with this woman, then we can.
yeah, the special permit process is very well defined, and we're staying within those guidelines. So there was a 270-some page report that we submitted that reflects the changes. You know, maybe we didn't explain ourselves clearly enough in the responses why we've downsized to 58.5. A lot of it is in response to your concerns.
Odor and sound.
Odor and sound specifically. We've engaged peer reviewers. We analyze the results of that data analysis. And we responded in every way we feel is possible to, you know, make a return on our investment. The numbers are less, there's no question about that, simple arithmetic. But there's still enough in there to make it worthwhile for us. We change, and you'll see, I mean, again, tonight's meeting is not the place for us to debate it because you're not prepared and we're not prepared. That wasn't the purpose of tonight's meeting. The information will be public, available to everybody. All of the peer reports are in there, all of the revised site plan drawings, all the data is in there. The conclusions are in there from our peer reviewers that indicate that the probability of the receptors, or the technical term for the neighbors, the probability of, and I can't quantify it, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a low probability that you'll have any incidents here.
I promise Denise
And we have, in the event that there is an odor detected at your property or anyone in the neighborhood, we have a published procedure where you would call us. We have a very specific procedure to identify the source and remediate it.
Okay, so there's been a lot of hands, so I'm gonna go Denise, then Eileen, and then this, if she still has a question, and then the woman,
Nan.
right, Natalie? Nan, after.
Okay, I was hoping you were gonna have SK Design come and show us your new proposed plan because you've downsized. Now, have you changed anything as far as the water recapture? Are you capturing the water at the bottom of the greenhouses?
Do you wanna explain that?
Why
No, we're
not?
not,
Why not?
we have rain gardens in between each greenhouse to deal with that, so that way we're not storing
Okay,
a bunch of
what
storm
about the water going down into the aquifer below? Is that-
SK's already answered that question about that it doesn't
Yeah, I
affect the
know it's gonna go
aquifer, and
through
then
the
there's.
gravel and that's gonna
So you may
clean it.
not like as an engineer, they answered that with the larger greenhouses. They will update their statement,
Right.
but if it didn't percolate or reach the aquifer prior, then with a smaller footprint, it's not going to do the same.
That
It's
doesn't
not
seem
gonna-
to equate with the hydrological survey that I've seen on that site.
Again, that's going to be an expert discussion. They've already given an answer. If you have somebody that wants to rebut their presentation, SK will be at the meeting on the 13th.
Okay, cause you'll be doing that presentation again
We're gonna show
with the
all of,
revised.
we're gonna show all the changes,
issues.
correct.
Okay, and
And-
also, just as a note, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal in November showing the collapse of the price of cannabis from $24 to $8. So it's just something that was out there. And if you're not gonna, you're only doing 58,000 square feet, 58,500. What about seasonal grows? You're gonna do more than one grow per year, or are you gonna do 3 grows as they get through?
The first year is what we're focused on, and it will be 58.5.
What
No,
happens
but
in
how
year
many
2?
times are you gonna, once it grows, it blooms, you're gonna harvest it, are you gonna do another grow straight away or wait until the next season?
Well, with the greenhouse, it's not an indoor grow inside a structure, so they are limited on the grow seasons. Are there
Right.
gonna be staggered grow? Yes,
Right.
the plan's always been staggered so that they could harvest and keep up with the process, but
Right.
we're not gonna grow through the winter season. It's just
Okay,
not
can I
possible.
ask whether you could actually ask for a variation to get light and heat into those? Can
So-
you go back to the select board and ask
Sure.
for a variation to actually have an
Are you-
extended grow?
I mean, I can go and ask for anything to the select board. I can. I don't know with our winters if anything like that will work, but I could ask for anything. It doesn't seem feasible to me and with any of the
Well, if you have
grow it.
presumably the right amount of light and heat, you can grow marijuana apparently
All
in
year round.
any climate.
But
Right.
But
anyway.
we're doing greenhouse, we're not doing indoor grow.
No, but
I-
my last comment was, when we were over at Nova Farms, I have my little grandson at the daycare right next door. The smell of marijuana was so bad, it was really, I took him out of that daycare. because it was really, really strong and very foul. The misting system that you're proposing to use apparently doesn't work very well, and that's been through all the cannabis articles you can read on everywhere. There's a better system out there, so the best system is to not do a greenhouse, but do a structured building and put carbon filters in, because that would work better.
Thank you, Eileen.
Did you say that your revised plans have been submitted?
Correct, they've been
Then
submitted.
they're a public
sometime.
document
They are
already.
a public
Yes.
document. Yeah, some of the, we're waiting for peer review to come back. That's what is not, peer review from odor and sound for the.
But that's irrelevant. Your plans are a
Our,
public document.
correct, but some of the questions have been specific to, odor and sound, and we have not had the ability to see the peer review plans, was what we were referencing before, but our plans have been on file.
The revised plans.
Revised plans, yes. Nan?
Well, I was curious when you said there were about 7% of the people that seemed to be not in favor of your going ahead with your project in terms of the community of Great Barrington. I don't know what the square mileage is of Great Barrington and how it relates to the square mileage of the village of Housatonic, but I would imagine that that 7% is fairly significant. And you're talking about the sensibility and the disposition and the political fervor of people who are living right next door, whose backyards are being affected by the project that you're proposing. So I would love to see those numbers. What is the square footage and relative size of the Housatonic village in comparison to the town of Great Barrington and the 7% number that you quoted?
I didn't do it based on square footage. I looked at the total population of Great Barrington, and your representation, I think, at one point of the number of people who had signed the petition against Fulcrum's activities. And
That was the 7% that you were talking about?
It was actually less than 7%, but.
But that's just a that was a
But that is also
petition,
whole-
that I literally stood in front of the post office. I mean, you know, I have a life too, but it was indicative, it was merely a symbolic gesture to show there was dissent as to the project.
Just on that point, you characterize that as a relatively small percent. 7 out of 100 would be relatively small, but what would a more substantial percent be? And a second question, if you understand that there is vocal concern or opposition from about 7%, about what percentage of people are vocal in their support of the project?
We haven't quantified that. To answer
Yeah, I think
your
it's
last question first. And I don't know, I couldn't quantify what it would be. You know, we're not Great Barrington residents over a long period of time. We did do some due diligence and came to Great Barrington based upon information that we had been hearing, where there was a favorable vote by a high percentage of the population of Great Barrington. Rather than look at property in a potentially qualifiable location, we thought we're in an industrial zone outside of town, and it fit within the guidelines that we had as well, with all of the improvements there. Honestly, I thought we were coming to a part of town that was very clearly industrial.
No,
And there were all
it's-
sorts
No,
of
it isn't.
uses.
You notice those houses across the street.
If everybody can, there's, all the way back, there was a question first, hand raised.
Yeah, so it's not a question. First you said we were not prepared, and I don't appreciate that because the fact that we're all here in the ice, we are prepared. So that's just one point. So I think we're just as prepared as you. Maybe we're more honest because we say what we believe, like you, who you say things and then you take it back. The other thing too, you said it's not going to impact, the order's not gonna impact our houses, and nothing is gonna impact where we live. Well, I'm having an impact because I'm selling my house And I've had people come from New York City, love my house, and they're saying, what's going up front? And they're saying, no, I don't want it. So it is going to impact our neighborhood. And you clearly don't care. You know, and I don't appreciate that. That's all I have to say.
Is there any, Terry, do you have a question, or you're just videoing?
Video, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Is there anyone that has a question who hasn't had a chance to raise, and is there any question that we haven't addressed yet that needs to be? Okay, Jim?
This would be to Mr. Ross, I guess, he's the technical expert on growing pot. Water usage, what are you estimating now as far as water usage?
Per greenhouse?
No, entire plan, per year.
The entire growth season, I mean, I can give you rough math right now. I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me. Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, I can get you pretty good ahead. It all depends on sunlight. Plants drink when it's sunny out, when it's not. But if you did an average of having to water twice a week, which would be pretty common, 2 to 3 times a year based on soil medium, you're going to be doing like.
But your concern is
No,
will
just-
we have enough water?
Well, my question had never been answered as far as drought. And I know Kate's gonna probably say, well, that's a question for Mr. Mercer. Well, this question definitely pertains to your business director. Has Mr. Mercer or anybody else ever said anything to you about water restrictions in the case of an event of a drought?
I asked Mr. Mercer that question, and he said there's never been an interruption.
And in addition, can you just let me give you a little more data on that? That was a question that was brought up on if Housatonic Water could support the process. It was brought up in the town forum, and the town reached out to the state to get quantity, and the quantity wasn't even close to being at a threshold for concern for usage. So that may be brought up by the town in additional. That was some work that they did to confirm that water was not a concern.
But the reality is, if there was a drought, there was water restrictions, because we've all lived in Housatonic long enough to have seen these cases where you can't water your lawn, can't water your garden, can't wash your car. There's clear water restrictions. Now, if somebody's not able to water their garden, are there restrictions placed on a business such as yourselves during an event of a drought?
My answer is going to be no, because there's no capacity issue. So they are a consumer and a paid customer as any other businesses in town.
Yeah, but how about the paying property owner who pays for their water?
Well, you can't limit one business, but there is no difference between a residential and commercial use in Housatonic.
As far as water?
Yes, exactly, as far as water company.
It's the same amount per gallon.
Correct. And
whether it's being spilled wherever. So my
capacity is not
question
an issue.
is if there is a drought, a declared drought, and such things like watering one's garden is put on hold. You can't water your garden, right? So they are restricting the public. Would your business be impacted by the same, I guess?
If there's not water, we would be impacted, and then the only other thing is to get our water from a different source. But it's not going to stop our usage before it stops someone else's usage. I know that's the answer you want to hear, but the capacity has plenty of capacity in the company based on state regulation, and they would be treated as any other paid customer.
So if the restrictions did reach every paying customer, there's the possibility exists that they could be restricted as well.
Correct. They could lose their crop like any other facility would lose their crop, and they would have the ability to look at other water solutions. So I don't believe you asked the question.
I have a couple, maybe not questions, but I'm going to put them out there. With the water usage, I have Housatonic water. My bill's anywhere between $55 and $100 a month. Do you pay like for the first 1,500 gallons, and then it's
We're working off the same
The
schedule.
same thing.
Same rate schedule.
That's gonna be like a massive, cost in water for you. So that's,
why Freddie said it's okay.
Freddie's gonna buy a new car.
just a little bit crazy as far as your business plan, but that's your business. The other thing is that where I have an issue is that you went from an 80,000 square foot thing, which was 1 square foot under being like a major industrial thing, down to 58,500. Where I see a problem is you're gonna get this permit to do this, and then you just have to ask for permission to get bigger. And we're gonna be back here again with the same old,
Again, the business methodology we have, based on the team's expertise, we feel very confident in our ability to have a competitive advantage.
What does that
And
mean?
we're not, it is not proprietary, I mean, it's not public, it's proprietary data. When people figure out what we're doing, you know, again, a lot of the research that you've been doing is based upon a business model that we've turned away from. And again, it's not for publication as to what our competitive advantage is, but rest assured, we have a competitive advantage. And in terms of the markets, of all of the oversupply and things like that, there are all sorts of dynamics, quality, and things that I'm not an expert on. And to speak to, I'm sorry, I forget your name, in the back when you said we weren't prepared.
Christabel.
Isabella, thank you.
Christabel.
So,
She lives across the
Christabel,
street.
right, we have spoken before.
That's right.
And the purpose of tonight's meeting was very strictly oriented towards the Cannabis Control Commission's requirements. So the conversations we're having now are natural, and we're not trying to resist any of it. And when I say we're not prepared, you're not prepared because you don't have all the information that was just published. And we weren't prepared to get into the detail without that information of us all working there and being at a meeting whose purpose was to discuss that. Tonight's meeting was to fulfill the Cannabis Control Commissions. That's what I meant with saying we're not prepared.
Well, I have a
Okay, wait,
question.
hold, sorry, Lee hasn't said anything, she's had her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a couple of questions. There have been various reports have been done, whether it's odor or sound, or water mitigation. Will all those reports be discussed at the select board meeting, or, will they all be discussed, whether they're favorable or unfavorable, or how is that working? And also, I was curious about the peer review when they come in. If they don't prove to be favorable, do you have a kind of B plan, or is there a chance that you might come back with another amendment to the site plan, depending on what the site plan, the peer review comes back? So just a two-part question, really.
Yeah, so let me explain how peer review tends to work, and it's how the chairman of the select board wants to run the meeting, but how peer review usually works. It happens in the planning board a lot with 2 engineers looking at things, and basically they have time to both present their data, and there's usually some discrepancy between them. They talk about methodology and how each one of them came up with their numbers or their findings, and they determine the best way to proceed. Either one says, I would like you to do it my way, or the other one says, I see why you did it this way, and they come up with a solution. So in a perfect world, it would be great if there's some give and take on how to get across the finish line. I can't tell you how this is gonna happen. I've also never had an odor or a sound peer review in any permitting I've ever done. Most of them are engineering based, so they're more mathematical, and they have some calculations behind them, so they can sort it out, and usually no one in the audience really understands their engineering answer anyway, and they get to a point to finish. The process with permitting, what we've done here and to change a plan as you go along is very consistent with the special permit process. The goal is to hear what people's concerns are and to get to the best project. I understand no one in this room is favorable for cannabis growing in their neighborhood right now, so I'm not thinking that anyone is going to embrace the plan, not from what I'm hearing here. But the thing is to listen to what the issues are: odor, noise, water. Okay, those were some of the issues that we've been hearing. So we took a step back. We made sure that the water numbers, everything was supported. That became something that peer review wasn't required because there were state statistics that were easy to check off the box on is there enough capacity or not. Odor and noise was engaged by the select board as a peer reviewer. So they're an employee of the, they're paid by the applicant, but they're they're working for the select board. How I see it happening is that we present our changes to the plan. We present the odor report that we submitted with the changers and the sound report that we presented to the peer reviewer, and then the peer reviewer will present their rebuttal to that. If they agree, it's done. If there's something that needs to be discussed further, we'll try to come up with a way to get over the finish line. That may require a change of the plan, unless someone comes with an alternative saying XYZ works, and we say, okay, we'll do XYZ, then maybe we don't need to leave and do an amendment to the plan, it's just a substitution. But usually I would think there would be some sort of calculation and additional material to get to satisfy. That's actually, in engineering, you usually take a couple weeks, come back with new engineered numbers to make the suggestion work.
So any reports that have been done will be on the table that night, like you'll read all the reports, whether favorable or non-favorable, like that'll be public.
Well, they're all already, as soon as a report is submitted, they're public knowledge. The problem with reading these permits, and it's why we try to comprehensively make one, we resubmitted some information, so in one package you see our submission, because it gets difficult when layers and layers are built on a project. So if you look at the, I guess we have to see what the report looks like. To me, a final report is probably the final product. We don't want to look at a report they might have been doing when the greenhouses were tilted a different way and they were bigger. So in my thought, it would be, there's the final report, is the final conclusions on the project that we're going to be presenting that night. But until I see that, I can't answer that question.
So is it a fair question for us to ask to be any other reports, let's say whether it's sound or odor, that have been done prior to the final report, just so we can kind of step through the different conclusions?
They're all town reports.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're all, the town commissioned them, the town has them in their possession already. I believe anybody who's made public records request party already have those in their hands. And they're there, but they may not be applicable if if there was 2 fans and now we have 1 fan, that obviously doesn't apply.
Okay, thank you.
And
go ahead.
everything that we've spent time doing since the last meetings is now available to the public. And we feel that we have been trying to listen. I mean, it seems like the best way we could be good neighbors is just to pack our bag and go away.
Yes.
And,
Since
you
you
know.
suggested that anyways, you want to be somewhere where you want to buy.
All right, let's, are you?
But the amount of effort that we put in from these last meetings, I think, should be evident with all of the studies and the reports that are already included in that.
In the back we have someone who's.
Hi, Karen Passmore. I keep hoping somebody else will talk about this, but I haven't heard anyone say it. My pet subject, you may know because you're my neighbor, is weeds. And what we're talking about tonight is a weed. And my entire little half acre of land is devoted to native species, and I tolerate newcomers as long as they behave well and they don't get too aggressive. Now, marijuana is on the invasive species list for the lower 48 states, Puerto Rico, and I think Hawaii. And my concern is the nature of a weed is that you don't need to do anything much to it. It sort of does what it wants. This particular plant loves water. It loves swamps. It comes from a very, very hot swamp originally. And if anybody has tried to deal with natural plants, wild plants, you know that they do what they want without any help. And my concern is whatever efforts you may try to make to control this thing, it will, I believe, or tell me that it won't, find its way into nature, find its way into our precious wetlands, and start drinking up the water like the Sudan grass, like the purple loosestrife, like all the other, like the Japanese knotweed, like the bittersweet, like whatever we have been plagued with, and have very, very few native plants that survive us, okay? And this is a plant that does not belong in the mountains of New England. This is a plant that belongs maybe in New Orleans marshes, but it came from a place that was very hot, very humid. And if you replicate that in a greenhouse and then have all these fans pushing the air out, you're pushing out mold and mildew. Everybody here in New England has mold and mildew on their shower curtains, mold and mildew under everything they put down if they don't tip it up so the air can get under. So I want to hear about mold, mildew, allergies, health issues. It says on this paper that the health board has nothing to do with this. This is hugely a health issue. This is such a new product, such a new experience for everyone that we don't have the laws in place to protect us, to protect our children. What if the kids start finding marijuana in the wilds? Why not? It's found on the riverbanks of the Winooski River up in Burlington and in Minnesota and in Kansas. They call it ditchweed, they call it riverweed. They find it, the kids are tittering in the, behind the barn, rolling it and smoking it. How is Massachusetts going to protect the 18 and under, 21 and under, if it's growing in the wild? And what tobacco farm in the South didn't have kids smoking cigarettes at 8 years old? What tobacco farm in the South didn't have tobacco growing weekly maybe, but still growing in the wild?
So what's your
And this is my question. You find a question in everything I said, because we haven't talked about this openly, and I have to bring it out because nobody else is saying it, and that's all I want to say.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over
The next
to.
Board of Health meeting is next week on Thursday. Oh, we go to.
Okay, if we're gonna answer, since it was a question, David's gonna answer that.
Cannabis can only grow wildly if it was to get pollinated and a seed was to produce, and that seed was to fly through the exhaust fan, or a bird or any type of animal was to come and eat it and dispose or go to the bathroom essentially. But we don't produce anything with male pollen. It's not a consumable product. We're not creating seed. We're creating a flower or a botanical extract. So the male plant is completely useless for us. It'd actually make us lose money if we had male plants in our greenhouses. So there's no way for a plant to get pollinated with our structures. So there's no way for it to just spread wildly.
And also in that report, you'll see the landscape plan is very oriented towards repopulating with native species and creating a regenerative property.
Okay, Michelle, and then maybe Michelle and I will get to you next, and then maybe we will wrap it up. If anybody else.
Still the mold and mildew you didn't talk about, and the allergies and such things. Mold,
Okay,
mildew, fans.
Anything with mold and mildew wouldn't be able to be sold. It would have, if there was mold, spotted mold would be remediated immediately because
It will be in the air that the fans are spewing out.
that's
It will be in
only
the
if
air.
we don't do our job. You understand what I mean by that?
No, because if the air in the greenhouse is so humid and the fans are basically to relieve that air, that humidity and the suffocating heat, then it is spewing out all kinds of mold and mildew in the air.
Well, that would be only if the plants were able to get botrytis. If they weren't able to get mold, then that's not ever going to happen. That would have to be a fault on the grower's error, and then it wouldn't be a product that would be able to be for sale to begin with because of the rigorous state testing. So, if that was to happen in a worst case scenario, we would have to get rid of the plant to begin with. The whole entire crop would have to go into the compost or go into the disposal.
Okay, but it may not be on the plant, it may be in the soil, it may be on the walls of the greenhouse.
Well, then it would be in the air anyways, right?
And it's a highly regulated.
No, because this is a type of greenhouse that is going to be fostering mold, fostering mildew. You're making it because of the high humidity and the heat. It's just gonna happen. It hopefully won't be on your plants,
No,
but it will be in the air because that's what New England is like. We all know this.
Yeah, I understand.
Michelle?
We're talking about the new reports that have been submitted to the town of Great Barrington last week or today. I know if you're not from Massachusetts, under the public records laws, the citizens are somewhat at a disadvantage. Every public records request that I've made or our attorney made, and I'm saying this because there are select board members in this room, we've had to wait 10 days to get the material. And as you know, it's coming down to the wire, so if tomorrow I make a public records request to get that documents, I'll need to wait 10 days to get it. And so we sitting in the room, we're already at a disadvantage here. Yes.
If you want to contact me to see if I have it in the next day or two and I have it, I would give it to you, but I can't say that I'm giving you everything that the town has.
Okay.
But if I have a report in my possession and I hear from you, I'll disseminate, because I know it will be a public I appreciate the fact, I've had to make many public records requests, and I understand that time is of the essence, so I feel that the town is making an effort to make this as transparent as possible.
They're making us wait right up to the 10 days.
Okay.
We've
Well,
never gotten anything before the 10
Are
days.
we permitted to give them?
If I have a document, then I have no problem if you request it and I have it in my possession. I'm just not going to make a statement that this is what the town has. I'm just telling you what I have.
Well, what you're
So-
referring to is something that has just been submitted, am I correct on
No, I don't,
that?
I'm not sure if it's been submitted. I'm expecting it any day now.
Well,
but I
who
don't
would
know.
submit it? Would,
No,
your experts?
We have our experts have put, in reports that were part of the application that I
Right.
believe you already have.
Right.
And then there's been discussions between the peer reviewer and our expert.
And I have those, yes.
Okay, so again, I just know between now and the 13th, the report's coming out. The selectmen will have a chance to review it. If you're concerned, if you wanna reach out to me in a couple days, if I have it,
Oh, I want it because it would be unreasonable for everybody in this room at a public hearing to be flipping through your documents, so we're at a disadvantage.
Give me a day or two and call me.
Okay, another thing regarding property values, and I just want to piggyback on what Christabel said about her property. I actually met with my real estate agent about my house, and I was very frank. I said, if this operation goes in, I'm very sensitive to odor. The reason why I inherited my family's homestead was the real estate to enjoy the outside. The house is a simple ranch, it's not much. I asked him point blank, will this impact my property value? He went like this. I said, next, we're in the middle of a renovation. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? He said, for you to get your money back, this is what you do. You go to the low end. So I'm already in conversation with our real estate agent on this. So if anyone sitting here thinks it's not going to impact, think again. We had this conversation May 28th. Retail is a lot different than living next to a growing manufacturing facility. And I just want to stress that, because when you do your research on impacts on property values, and by the way, there are already lawsuits on the West Coast regarding this, they'll talk about retail and the revitalization of an area. That's retail, it's commercial properties. When your home is located in the area of a growing manufacturing facility, it's a whole different story. Also on water, I know that'll be discussed, and we'll let the experts discuss it. But Kate, I'm sure you're familiar with the town master plan, and I don't know if a lot of people realize that the emergency water for the town of Great Barrington, which is the Great Barrington Fire District, is the Housatonic Water Company. So keep that in mind. We're the go-to. Housatonic Water is the go-to for the town of Great Barrington. Something goes wrong, we go down, town of Great Barrington goes down with us. Another thing, you speak as to the jobs that this is going to create, which is like 3, with one principal being there. As through CCC rules, there are the areas of disproportionate impact, and the closest one is Pittsfield. Will you have to give preference to a Pittsfield job applicant as opposed to a Great Barrington one?
No.
No.
Trevor?
Yeah, Mr. Heck, you said something right at the beginning that I thought was quite interesting. I just wanted to go into that a little bit more. You said that you chose this location because it was an industrial zone. And I think actually probably a lot of people in this room would agree that it's important that this type of facility should be in a proper industrial zone. It's been something we've been saying all the way along. Did you read, just out of interest, the Town of Great Barrington master plan before you went into this location? Did you actually see any details of the Great Barrington master plan? The reason I ask that question is I wonder whether it would have changed your view as to the suitability of this particular location. Because the Town of Great Barrington master plan for the road of through Van Duzenville basically states that they look at it as being an area of moderate to high residential ability. And another aspect in the master plan of the Town of Great Barrington is their interest in basically encouraging young families into the location of Housatonic. With that knowledge, would that have affected your decision to basically look for a permit in a very small light industrial location embedded within what is supposed to be a residential area that is moderate to high density?
I would think it might have. I mean, it's a hypothetical.
No, it's not hypothetical, it's actually there. It's actually in writing. The Town of Great Barrington.
It's also an industrial zone,
Volume
and
one.
a lot of there are residences there that are by special permit in an industrial zone.
Yeah, but
So it's a
Kate,
gravel,
you know
it's a gravel
the,
operation.
yeah.
I actually think it's a perfect location.
No, you know
I do.
you know the master plan. It says it is an area of basically potential moderate to high residential density. That's what it states.
Board members should know that it's not a gravel bed operation.
You basically stated, I think quite rightly, this is a facility that should be in an industrial location. This is a small industrial zone, but it's basically embedded in a very potentially a sizable residential location. It's not like the city of Pittsfield, for example, with its industrial zone there, or probably even Lee for that matter. This is altogether a very different
It's
sort of
zone
project.
industrial. The special permit is being sought after for the marijuana establishment in
I
an
understand
industrial.
that, Kate, but I was
So-
asking Mr. Heck a
And he's
particular question.
and he's answered this question
Yeah.
in different ways throughout the.
Well, you just answered the question.
What about
That's fine.
22 zoning?
Okay, so everyone, there's this woman right here has had a hand up for a really long time, so you
Thank
wanna
you
put it
so
down for
much.
1 second, just,
So-
but I was.
Me or
No,
somebody
no,
else?
it's you.
Okay.
You look like you were in pain, so I
no,
was.
yeah, because it's been, the thing is, we can go in circles about this expert, this thing, that thing. All you have to do, and this is a community outreach meeting, this is your community that you are imposing yourself upon. And I say imposing because all you have to do is walk down Van Duzenville Road to see that people live there. that it is not industrial zoning only. You wanna look at this, look at that. This is everything else that's around you. So I don't care what the numbers are. I don't care about all that. I don't care about what this paper says and what that paper says. This is a human instance here. This is what we're talking about. The other thing is, I work with people who smoke pot. I'm not interested in it. It's not my thing. One girl will put her handbag on the table and it smells like she has a major live skunk in that bag. I don't need an expert to tell me that it stinks. I don't need reports. I don't need any of that stuff. My question to you is, why are you so hell-bent on being in that spot when there are so many things? I mean, obviously, it comes down to one thing, and that is greed. It has nothing to do with a human element, with a community outreach, or anything else. All it is money. And we have that issue in this world. This is a major social problem. And you may not find the opposition in Great Barrington proper that you are finding when you move yourself into Housatonic. And this is your attempt at community outreach, not knocking on the door, not saying hello, not saying this family is going to be out of their home, or anybody else who's there. The river, whatever's happening in the environment there that you will impact. Why are you so hell-bent on being there? Go somewhere else.
Ma'am,
just go.
He's answered that question.
No, he has
No, he
not.
has not.
Never answered that. He has not. He has we're not talking figures and numbers here. I'm sorry, you're doing your job. Great job. But the bottom line is we are people here who are trying to speak with you on a community basis, not numbers, not papers. And in the end, whatever ends up happening, you're going to be the one who bears the burden of that down the road. You will bear that burden. Try your hardest here. There's cheaper places. You know this, but for some reason you want to be there, and this is not coming across honestly. And you know that, and we know that. We don't need all this paperwork. It's
You
not a
never
mystery
said why
here.
you weren't gonna, why you changed
So
your mind.
that's all. I'm just like tired of numbers and all of this stuff. The bottom line is it's right there.
Does anyone have
I
a different
agree.
question that has not been addressed this evening? And
I
I'm
wanna
gonna cut you,
piggyback
I'm
on
gonna
what
cut you off if we've already addressed it, but if not, I'll take,
Well, I just wanna piggyback on kind of what they were mentioning.
Okay,
I
and-
was wondering if you saw like the order conditions on the industrial's plans of that industrial in Nolan Drive.
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you seen when they made the order conditions on that property?
Order of conditions.
Yeah.
Do you have those with you,
Okay.
Michelle?
Yeah, we've seen the order of conditions.
I mean, one of them, just so you know this, when you said this was industrial zone, when he built that land, he subdivided it, and if you put it in with the town, it comes out, section 4, prohibited uses and activities, was one of the things he set up, he wanted to be a good neighbor. One of them was, section 4, prohibited uses and activities, no obnoxious or offensive trade will be conducted on subject land, nor shall any of the therein which may become nuisance to, or a nuisance by reason of sightliness and excessive emission of odors, dust, fumes, and noise.
Okay, and then I understand that. Those are requirements as well of a special permit, and those are what they hired the peer review to flesh out.
But you're
So-
saying this is industrial land, like it's gonna be like, it was meant for all this other stuff, it was never meant for gravel, you're saying, everyone says it's gravel pit.
You remember seeing it as farm.
Everyone says it's a
It
gravel
wasn't
pit.
industrial. And for Mr. Hankin or anybody else from a planning board or anywhere else to say it's a gravel operation is foolish.
It's
Mr.
not
Hazel's
gravel.
too busy
Permitted
laughing.
gravel
So,
operation and that-
Jim, I have your point, and I understand yours, and we will meet all those requirements, cause they're on the land.
Operation, would you look at
Yeah,
the
but
greenhouse?
you all mentioned
It's
it's
not
an
a gravel
industrial
operation,
zone,
that's
it's
the
not
problem.
meant for large
The town
industrial
got out of
or
control
anything.
with that.
Okay, so Jim, again, please, I'm gonna ask, there's a few more people that have their hands up, two right here. If, please have it be a new question that we haven't already addressed.
This is a clarification. I believe Housatonic has around 1,600 voters, and so the petitions that were submitted are close to 20% of the village. And if you wanna see more names, we'll get more names, a lot more, cause we didn't really try.
I'll help you, Angela.
All help.
I just wanted to follow up on the health issues. I think many of us have concerns about potential health problems, including allergies and water quality, air quality. And I was kind of stunned that you used a technicality to shut down the health committee, from exploring and getting their questions answered.
There is no bylaw that
I
is.
understand that, but that's a technicality. Why wouldn't you wanna really explore this with us if you cared about our health?
Because it wasn't being explored, it was, we were being criticized and we were being, like put in front of a firing squad. It was all, it was.
Like you're doing to the neighborhood,
Yeah,
that's the
you're putting
point.
But there was no give and take. It was all,
No, actually,
100%
I think that the
factual.
board, actually, I was so impressed with the health board, they were so respectful in asking questions. And you were, honestly,
down.
Kate, you were so rude to them.
Well, I've heard that in the past on how that meeting went down. We satisfied what we needed to satisfy
I know,
with them.
just
And-
according to a law, but why
But
don't you care?
I do care, but there's CCC regulations, there's state regulations, there are regulations that we are going to meet. We are held to
But you
to
don't wanna
that
talk
standard.
about it, you don't wanna address it.
I'll have
with
no
us.
problem talking and addressing, and I'll even come to a discussion, but to be put up in a meeting where people are telling us what the black and white is and what other states have done.
They were asking
well,
questions.
That's not, that is not
They were
how.
asking really legitimate questions.
They have a right, we have a right to speak for our neighborhood, they have a right, they're the health department.
Correct,
lawyer,
they
our
definitely
lawyer
have
has
a,
a right.
they have a right,
I mean,
and
you
they
guys,
can-
it's an imposition, so we're just, we have a right.
This is our homes. I just want you guys to remember. My dad built my house. I grew up there. It's my home. I know Westchester County. We have friends down there. It's real nice down there. But when I can't go out during the summer, we had the dream of someday having my daughter's rehearsal dinner on the hill overlooking the mountains. How are we going to have that if she has a September wedding, October wedding, and there's odor? And speaking of odor, are you familiar with Bayer Scientific and Manufacturing? They tout themselves as among the leaders in odor control. They did this report, which you can have a copy of.
What's the name of the company?
Bayers, Byers, Scientific. Through the Cannabis Business Times, which I subscribe to stay on top of the marijuana industry, in November there was a webinar with regard to odor. And right during this webinar, and you can go on to Cannabis Business Times, and it's no big secret, it's there. They said neutralizing odor outside the greenhouse isn't effective. It needs to be scrubbed within the greenhouse with carbon scrubbers before it's even released out. So I would highly recommend that people in this room, before they go to the January 13th hearing, listen to that webinar, which is really,
Michelle's, Doug had his hand up as well.
go ahead, Doug.
It may have been uncomfortable for you to hear the direction that the Board of Health was going, but I believe that what you did demonstrated bad faith. That was a mistake in your part. You never should have done that. And you can keep them from issuing a formal recommendation. But one thing you can never do is you can't change the public record. And what the public record reflects is that the Board of Health was adversarial to your proposal. And you can't change the public record. And you can throw your fit and stomp your feet and do whatever you want to do, but you can't change the public record. And the public record shall stand forever.
And the
Okay.
recording.
If there's any other question we haven't heard, but if not, we're gonna adjourn the meeting. Is there a
I do.
we would also like to take any materials you have, but if we're just gonna test, if it's a question, then we'll take it. If it's like testimony, we would like you to provide it to us, but
May I go ahead?
yes.
Are you familiar with a July 21st, 1989 letter from the Massachusetts Historical Commission regarding the site?
I actually am.
You are, okay, about the possibility of human remains being at the site. Also, another question, are you familiar with Columbia Growth? In today's Berkshire Eagle, a huge cultivation and manufacturing company called Columbia Growth is going to locate in Lee in one of their mills. So obviously they did their homework. Now Lee is one of the towns that has arms wide open to the marijuana industry. So this will be your competitor. And I agree with Mr. Forbes, in order for you to even compete in the local market now, the square footage you have right now probably won't do it, which I believe would invite you to come back before our select board for an expansion later on.
You can understand why we feel that you're not doing this in good faith and why we don't have trust in you. Hopefully this meeting has indicated that to you.
We appreciate the feedback. We appreciate everybody coming tonight. And we look forward to seeing everybody on the 13th. For updates on timing, and please look at the select board website. I was told that they may try to look for a larger venue, but I don't have that information. So right now it still stands, but there will be, I think if they get another